It's Sunday, May 10th, and it has been an extraordinary news day. Iran has formally responded to U.S. proposals aimed at ending the war. A hantavirus outbreak on a cruise ship has triggered a multinational hazmat evacuation, and a record-shattering heatwave is baking nearly 2 billion people across South Asia. Plus, Hungary's democratic shift, a landmark U.S. court ruling on tariffs, unprecedented purges in China's military leadership, and a ransomware attack that's thrown college finals into chaos. Let's get into it. Iran has delivered its formal reply to the U.S.'s 14-point memorandum on ending the conflict, and right now, the contents are a closely guarded secret on both sides. What we do know, Pakistan has been mediating. PM Shahbaz Sharif confirmed receiving Iran's response but won't share details. The proposals reportedly cover nuclear enrichment limits, sanctions relief, and maritime security in the Strait of Hormuz. And that last point is key. The Strait of Hormuz blockade has been driving global oil prices since the war began, with ripple effects hitting every continent. Here's what this means. Iran is also warning France and the UK against any naval deployment in the strait, threatening a decisive and immediate response, so even if talks advance, the military tension isn't easing. This is the most significant diplomatic development since the war began. Whether it's a genuine off-ramp or just another dead end, the world will be watching closely in the days ahead. And with Israeli PM Netanyahu insisting Iran's enriched uranium must be taken out before any deal is done, the gap between the parties remains enormous. While diplomats sort through Iran's response, a very different kind of crisis has been unfolding in the Atlantic, one involving a cruise ship, hazmat suits, and a virus that's triggered a multinational airlift unlike anything we've seen since COVID. The MV Hondius, a cruise ship that set sail with hundreds of passengers, has become the epicenter of a terrifying health crisis. At least 3 people are dead, and more than 90 passengers were evacuated from the ship in Tenerife under extraordinary scenes, evacuees in hazmat suits, being sprayed down with disinfectant right on the tarmac before being airlifted home. Spanish nationals went to a military hospital in Madrid, British and French passengers were flown to Manchester and Paris, and citizens from the US, Turkey, and Ireland were also evacuated. The culprit is the Andes strain of hantavirus, and here's what makes this particularly concerning. Unlike most hantaviruses, the Andes strain is one of the very few that can spread from person to person, not just through rodent droppings. That's why the Spanish health minister called this operation unprecedented, and why the WHO has recommended a 42-day quarantine period. In a dramatic subplot, the British Army even parachuted onto the remote island of Tristan da Cunha, one of the most isolated places on Earth, to rescue a Briton with a suspected case. This is the biggest cruise ship health emergency since COVID shut down the industry in 2020, and it's far from over. From an outbreak at sea to a crisis on land, a brutal heatwave is now testing the limits of survival for nearly 2 billion people across South Asia, and scientists say this is far beyond normal summer weather. If it feels like the planet is running a fever, there's a reason. A record-shattering heatwave is sweeping across India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, with temperatures hitting 45 to 50 degrees Celsius, that's 113 to 122 degrees Fahrenheit. At least 10 people have died in Pakistan alone, and authorities fear that number will climb. Schools have been closed in multiple states, outdoor workers are being urged to stay home, and hospitals are reporting a surge in heatstroke cases. What's driving this? Scientists say it's a combination of human-driven climate change and lingering El Niño patterns. As one Indian climate researcher put it, high-pressure systems are trapping hot air near the surface like a dome, preventing it from rising and cooling. Historians note that while South Asia has always had pre-monsoon heat, the intensity and the early timing of this year's event are without precedent. What this means going forward, with nearly a fifth of the world's population affected, this isn't just a weather story, it's a humanitarian emergency testing infrastructure, food security, and healthcare systems across the region. From a climate crisis to a political one, there's rare good news out of Europe today, as Hungary's long Orbán era comes to a definitive end with a landslide nobody saw coming just a year ago. It's not often you get to report a genuine democracy story, but here's one: Hungary has a new prime minister. Peter Magyar was sworn in today after his TISA party won a staggering 141 out of 199 parliamentary seats, a landslide that ends Viktor Orban's 16-year grip on power. In his inaugural address, Magyar said, "I will not rule over Hungary, I will serve my country." Tens of thousands celebrated in the streets of Budapest. The context here matters. TISA was only founded 2 years ago and went from 0 seats to a supermajority, while Orban's Fidesz crumbled from 135 seats to just 52. But a sobering perspective, the incoming government is warning of a very grim economic situation after years of state funds being channeled to Fidesz-connected businesses. What this means for Europe: expect a dramatic reset in Hungary's relationship with the EU and NATO after years of democratic backsliding. Magyar has promised a change of system, and Brussels is already watching closely. This is a genuinely historic moment for European democracy. Staying on geopolitics but shifting gears to trade, a U.S. court has just delivered a ruling that could reshape global commerce, and the timing with the Iran crisis makes it especially consequential. The U.S. Court of International Trade has struck down Trump's 10% global tariff, ruling it illegal under a never-before-invoked provision of trade law, Section 122 of the Trade Act of 1974. Here's the key legal argument. Importers successfully argued that this law was written back when the US dollar was pegged to gold, and it doesn't apply in today's floating exchange rate system. The court agreed, and that leaves Trump without his primary negotiation leverage heading into next week's scheduled meeting with China's Xi Jinping. What this means: Trump will almost certainly appeal, and he's already vowed to find a different way to impose tariffs. But analysts say that could take weeks or months. And here's the broader picture: with the Iran conflict already driving oil prices and supply chain uncertainty, this tariff decision sends another shockwave through global markets. Expect currency fluctuations, stock market reactions, and a lot of legal maneuvering in the days ahead. This story is breaking, and it has major implications for pretty much every country that trades with the United States, which is to say, pretty much every country. Meanwhile, in China, the ongoing purge within the country's military leadership has reached a stunning new level, with consequences that reach far beyond Beijing. China has handed down suspended death sentences to 2 former defense ministers, Wei Fenghe and Li Shangfu, after both were convicted of bribery. In China's system, a death sentence with reprieve almost always gets commuted to life without parole, so these men likely won't be executed. But the political signal here is unmistakable. These are successive defense ministers, the absolute top of China's military establishment, being purged in a way that has no modern precedent. For context, Xi Jinping has launched waves of anti-corruption drives since coming to power, but critics argue they've also been used as a tool to purge political rivals. What this means: it reveals deep factional battles within the People's Liberation Army and underscores Xi's determination to tighten control, even at the highest levels. The contrast with Mao-era purges is striking, but the scale of this crackdown targeting the top military brass is something we haven't seen in decades. For the rest of the world, it raises uncomfortable questions about stability in the world's second-largest military, especially at a moment of heightened global tension. And finally, a cyber attack with real-world consequences for millions of students, parents, and educators around the world, hitting at literally the worst possible time of year. If you're a student or a parent, you've almost certainly heard of Canvas. It's the online learning platform used by more than 8,800 schools and universities worldwide. This week, it got hit hard. The ransomware group Shiny Hunters, the same crew behind the massive Snowflake data breaches in 2024, breached Instructure's systems, accessing the data of 275 million users, names, emails, student IDs. And with finals season in full swing, the timing couldn't have been worse. Schools across North America, including the University of Illinois System, UC campuses, and UMass Dartmouth, have been forced to postpone exams, scramble for alternatives, and reassure panicked students. What this means: this follows last year's PowerSchool breach that exposed data from 60 million K-12 students, making it clear that educational platforms are now prime targets for ransomware. What's especially alarming is that the ransom note actually encouraged individual schools to negotiate directly, a new escalation tactic. It's a vivid reminder that a cyber attack doesn't have to target a bank or a government to cause chaos. When you shut down the system that runs final exams for millions of students, that's real-world impact. That's your Sunday rundown. To recap, Iran has responded to U.S. peace proposals but military tensions remain high. A hantavirus outbreak has triggered dramatic evacuations, South Asia is in the grip of a brutal heatwave linked to climate change, and Hungary has turned a page politically, though the economic challenges ahead are steep. On the economic front, Trump's tariffs were ruled illegal in a landmark decision, China purged its top military brass in an unprecedented crackdown, and a ransomware attack threw college finals into chaos. We'll be tracking all of these stories as they develop, especially the Iran negotiations, the tariff appeal, and the hantavirus quarantine period. I'm Naeem, thanks for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.